see if any questions pop up. Again, I'm Rob, the tree fruit guy, born and raised in Washington State. I shared with you that I'd spent some time in the military after I got out of school, and I've been managing orchards for a good part of the years since then. I did take a couple of years off when I was 50 years old, and I took some time and went back to college. I'd always wanted to get a degree. My two sons were the first to get degrees in our family, and I was the third. And I went back to college and got a degree in theology. It took me 7 years to do that. So not only do I farm during the week, but I am also an ordained pastor, and I preach most every Sunday morning. So that's what I was doing this morning and most Sundays. Yeah, I took some time off and went back to college because I got burnt out, frankly. Farming is a high stress deal, especially in these high intensity orchard systems and these high intensity environments. You have the frost protection and always the pressure of the cost and the labor cost and getting the crop off. It's a very, very high pressure job, and so I would encourage you to make sure that you carve out time for yourself and for your family. That's real important. As I look back over the years of farming, if I could do one thing differently, I probably would have spent more time with my boys and with my kids. So that would be my advice to you. Yeah, going to take a little time off. We're in between petal fall sprays. We got all our petal falls on this week. So now we just have to give them a little bit of time. Those petal falls usually take about 7 or 8 days before you begin to see the fruit fall off. And then we'll let that fruit grow a little bit till it gets about, I think 8 to 11 millimeters, the size on that. And then you'll have one more chance for a late thinning spray. I hate those millimeter, they call them millimeter sprays. So the next spray will be a millimeter spray. The fruit's a little bigger, and what I don't like about millimeter sprays is each fruit that falls from the tree, once they get to that stage, has the potential to bruise fruit on the way down. So we really take precautions and do lime sulfurs early and do petal falls early so we can avoid those millimeter sprays at all costs. But we will be talking about those here in the next 10 days or something, because we're going to have to confront those in blocks that still have a real high crop load. They're going to still be really expensive to hand thin. We'll have to talk about whether or not we want to go in and do them in loose. I'm going to go ahead and jump into some questions here. So we're going to start with a question from Abney. Abney says, please tell me some fertilizer for very low growth. I have only 4 to 6 inches of growth in Gala trees planted last year. 70% clay soil type with pH above 7. That gives me a little bit of information. I know what your pH is. Your pH is above 7. I have a standard mix that I use in soils. Our soils are typically, 7.4, 7.6, a little on the high side. We want to keep those at 7. We want to keep them as close to neutral as possible. So it sounds like you're not in a terrible range for your pH. Young trees, they like nitrogen. You just got to push the gas down and just pour the N to them. So I typically put together a mix that's something like 30 pounds of N, 30 pounds of P, 50 pounds of K. Since your pH is a little high, I might have 30 pounds of sulfur in there. Just a standard mix. But it's not so much the mix. There are a lot of good mixes out there that you can buy that will do the same as this mix that I typically use, a 1616. The key to getting those trees to grow is consistency. You have to be consistent. If you have a drip line, I tell my guys to fertigate twice a week. Fertigate on Tuesday and fertigate again on Friday. And try to max it out. Try to get in 8 pounds of N, 10 pounds of N, 12 pounds, until you begin to see the fringes of those leaves begin to burn a little bit. Just keep the gas down. And every time you miss one of those applications, you missed an opportunity for growth. So big growth is really about just keeping your foot on the gas and being very consistent. If you can fertigate, fertigate. If you can't fertigate, you can spread dry fertilizer at the base of the tree and water it in somehow. Get it watered in, but keep that fertilizer at those rootstocks. You can go to Ace Hardware, and I was at my aunt's house the other day, and what's that blend that she uses down there? She just uses
chicken
Miracle-Gro. Yeah, she
and
just
chicken poop.
Miracle-Gro and mixes it up in a jug and pours it on the tree. It works fantastic, just like fertigation. She also has a compost that she buys at Ace Hardware, a chicken compost. Same thing. She mixes it up in a jug with water and makes a tea out of it and pours it at the base of those trees, and she gets great growth. So I don't think the magic is in the mix. There's a lot of great mixes out there. The key is diligence and consistency, and keep that fertilizer in front of that tree through that grand period of growth while it's growing. Yeah, we have Ziui. I hope we got that right. Tara is on board, and MTB4 72020. Nice to have you guys on board. We're going to keep going through these questions right here. Levent has a question. His question is, can the V system be applied to the Eden Gold pear variety? That's a great pear variety. If so, which rootstocks or soils are calcareous? I have seen pears, not this particular variety, but I have seen pears grown on a V trellis, and the production is fantastic. Just absolutely fantastic. I'm going to be honest with you. Here in Washington State, we still have a lot of old home farm rootstock. We got a lot of old home farm 87, a lot of old home farm 97. There's some 111. There are some newer rootstocks out there, but mostly they're on old home farm is what we have out here. And since the emphasis on crops is really in apples and cherries, we don't see a lot of real modern pear systems, but we do have some, and I would say this system would work. The downside of it is that if you get fire blight in there, if you get some problem in there, it's a lot more difficult to get those pear trees out of there and get the interplants to come back in and regrow. But it's a great question. Yes, you can absolutely grow pears to your location and to your soil. Vincent has a question. He says, if you don't have an orchard like most of us, how do you train a tree? So Vincent is probably a backyard grower. It's a great question. You know, some of these dwarfing rootstocks, it's real important that those trees have a support system. That rootstock is just so small. By the time you put 80 to 100 apples on one of those small trees with a dwarfing rootstock, the tree just can't sustain it, can't hold it over. And excuse me, if it's not supported, you never really get it to grow good because every time the wind blows that tree, those fine little root hairs on that little dwarfing rootstock, they break loose, and you lose those, and you lose growth in the tree. It always keeps the tree slowed down, so they have to be secured to something if you have a dwarfing rootstock. Now, if you have an older seedling rootstock or an old rootstock or a big 111 or something like that, you can probably get away with not securing that. But what I would do is, if I was a backyard grower, I'd keep it real simple. Can you move that camera over here for me, honey? I'll just draw you a picture real quick. Apple tree, basically on just a standard backyard apple tree, you want to have a column. So that's the column of the tree right there, and it's going to be anchored into the ground, and you got your roots coming off of that. And basically, you just want to build an upside down base, and you're going to start out with bottom scaffold limbs on the bottom. And just like your Christmas tree, you're just going to build scaffolds of limbs all the way around that tree, getting shorter all the way up the tree. Pruning rules on a tree like this is you never let a limb go back up inside the tree. If a limb starts growing back up inside the tree, you just cut that limb out of there. Take it out of there. We don't want any limbs doing that. That's kind of how you maintain this system. You don't want any real strong suckers coming off the tree. So you kind of keep those removed, and you try to keep anything coming off these scaffolds. You want limbs coming off both sides of that, but you want to kind of keep those small, right? And you can build some depth on that. So basically, that's all you're going to do. You're going to grow an upside down Christmas tree, get it anchored in the ground real well. I would really encourage you to put some sort of a support on there. In my backyard, I just keep it real simple. In my backyard, I just have some 4x4 posts that I bought at the hardware store, and I have those about every 20 feet apart, just like that right there, just some posts. And it just simply has 4 wires on it. That's all I have in my backyard. And it works just fine because you can plant the trees up there and secure those limbs on the wire. So, and it's kind of fun. So if you have the means to do that, I would encourage you to do that. It's a little bit of fun, but you can do it the other way too. I hope that answers that question. Okay, I don't see a name here, but maybe it's Vincent again. Is it better to thin flowers or thin fruits? Good question. The short answer is it's thinly. That's the short answer. If you have a backyard and you can thin flowers, I would really encourage you to thin flowers. Not only does it minimize risk of fire blight every time you take a flower off, it reduces that risk of fire blight inherently. It thins your crop load early. So thin flowers, if you can't get in there and thin flowers, just as soon as the apple's set. We've been talking about that calyx folding up on that apple, and you can tell when that apple's set. Just as soon as you can tell that your king or your apple is set, you can begin to go in there and start thinning. Now you need to decide, do you want to set one apple per cluster or do you want to set two? You may want doubles. Likely you do. If you're a backyard grower, if you're a commercial grower, you probably want singles. But the short answer is you want to thin early. Thin flowers and then if you don't get to thinning flowers, get in there as early as you possibly can, as soon as that apple is set, and begin thinning. Why do we do that? Well, we do it so that we can have nice big apples. That's part of the equation, yes. And beautiful apples, so they color up. They're separated from one another. But the biggest reason we do it is the earlier you can get that fruit off, the tree is going to have a response for the following year. And so the earlier you can get that fruit off, the better the response and the better your return bloom next year. The later it takes you to get that fruit off, the worse your return bloom next year as a general rule. So that's why we like to thin early. Insecticides. Which insecticides do you do at this stage? And are you doing mixing with fungicides and nutrition and insecticides? I'll take the last part of that question first. Yes, we do mix fungicides, insecticides, and foliar sprays. You got to be real careful. So hopefully you have a field man that can make recommendations on you. I got some just basic rules. I never mix anything with copper. I try to never mix anything with calciums. I try to stay away from that. Most other things you can kind of mix. I don't ever like to mix more than about 5 products together at a time. You got to be real careful about that. So yeah, you can mix, but you really ought to kind of have some experience with that and know what you're doing and know what to stay away from so that you don't mark fruit. Sulfurs, calciums, coppers. Stay away from mixing anything like that. And frankly, any metals, any foliar metals. I would just stay away from foliar sprays with trying to mix a whole lot of stuff unless you really know what you're doing. What are we spraying for right now? The petals are about gone, so we're just about finished with fire blight sprays, thank goodness. I think we about have that behind us. We're spraying for thrips right now. We're spraying for aphids right now. We're getting started on codling moth sprays right now and getting all our pheromones hung in the trees above the orchard. What else are we spraying right now? Foliar sprays. Starting to get foliar sprays on. Trying to get calcium on. I'm a real big believer in getting calcium on through the drip as early as you possibly can, especially on Honeycrisp and Cosmic Crisp and Envy and these varieties that are really sensitive to bitter pit. I really, really like to fertigate that calcium into the system. You can do that up until about full bloom, till about 40 days after full bloom. That's real effective, and that's really the transport of that plant to best get that calcium into the apple. After 40 days, 40 to 45 days after full bloom, you're just throwing your money away trying to fertigate calcium. You should stop the fertigation of calcium and frankly just about anything else and go to foliars. I would go to foliar calciums, although I'm not sure how effective we still do them. But I would be doing those. I'd be doing thrips, aphids, finishing up fire blight sprays and foliar sprays. Be doing a lot of foliar sprays right now. What else we got here? You from the school, orchard question in general. With the high land prices, labor, and other input costs, how could somebody wanting to start out, take over an orchard begin? Apples are mainly a fresh crop that can store decently well. There are some pear orchards in California. Del Monte closed some canning facilities. Yeah, I'm aware of that. So Del Monte also closed a facility just right down the road from us. And I understand that. The industry's tough right now. It's been tough the last 3 years, and we are seeing some movement in prices. We do see some reason for hope. I've been through this is the third time now. I'm older. I'm 62 years old, and so this is the third downturn that I've seen in the tree fruit industry over the course of my career. And so I'm happy to say that I see us coming out the other side of that. And I think better days are ahead. We're starting to see, prices kind of tick up, and I think that's really good. So I think there is cause for hope, and I think there's cause for hope for small growers. I really, really have a heart for small growers. Me and my dad and my brothers and my mom, we carved out a piece of land with our bare hands and planted an orchard and a little 20-acre pear and cherry orchard. So my heart really, really is in small growers and seeing them be successful. But it is tough, and times have changed, and if you don't have that ability to spread out your overhead over a large amount of acres, it gets even tougher. I understand that. How do you survive? Well, I think you have to figure out what the highest quality product is in your area and grow that. Don't try to get outside of that. Find out what your market is and grow to that market, grow to that. But I also think when you're small, you need to carve out some sort of a niche. I see people doing fruit stands successfully in Michigan. It's fun to kind of see some of those. And down here we see fruit stands that are set up and people marketing cider and having a small vineyards and wineries associated with their orchard. Something to draw tourists in, something to draw families in. Just some sort of a niche that sets you apart and makes people want to come and be a part of the experience of an orchard. There's still a big demand for that. People want to get out and be a part of that. So that's my advice. Keep it simple. Keep your inputs low. Good help. Find some good help. Do as much as you can yourself. But boy, there's not enough can be said about having good people alongside of you to help you. What do we got here, honey? Is this questions? Okay, I'll just set that right there. Well, good. It sounds like we've got quite a few people online. Appreciate that. Jeremy, about 4 years ago, I had an employee go through and remove the bottom 20 inches of branches in a new block. Ouch. Completely, the first 40 inches. Is there any recommendations on possibly scoring to bring these back? So that sounds like that's a 4-year-old tree. Boy, every year of scoring, it gets more and more difficult, but it's still possible. If you have type or Proman, I would try that along with scoring above that bud. We've been talking about scoring a little bit. I think that there are opportunities for scoring and getting breaks, but it's going to be pretty tough. The other thing that you could do is I don't know how tall those trees are by now, but you could always go back down and head those branches again and try to get some new breaks coming out of there, and that may just work. I suspect over time those trees are going to give you opportunities. They're going to give you breaks, and when you see those, don't prune them off. Take advantage of them, and I suspect you'll get some breaks back in the bottoms of those trees. But scoring is going to be a little hard at 4 years. I would try it. Heading would be a little more effective than that, I think. But I would just watch for opportunities on those. Larry, on the backyard apples, cherries, pears, peaches, pinching and channeling for growth. What are the genetics of these trees? Are they all call-on their trees with no more than golf-sized ball trunks? Are they full-size trees? Is the name the same as you would buy in a big box store, new upgraded variety? Okay, I think I know what you're getting at. I'm not getting any special trees. I'm probably getting the same trees that you're growing. We are commercial farmers, so we'll have trees custom grown. Those trees will be custom grown 2 years in advance. So they're grown in the nursery, and by the time we get those, they're pretty well feathered trees. In other words, they look similar to the tree we drew on the board a while ago. They'll have some branching on those. A lot of trees that you get in say a nursery or at Walmart, I've seen some pretty decent trees at Lowe's. Sometimes they'll give you whips on those and they don't give you great limbs on those. The best thing to do for a tree if you don't have good branching is when you first plant that tree in the ground, head it at about 32 or 34 inches and it will give you the branching that you want. If you're a commercial grower and you get a nice tree that's 3 or 4 feet long and it's got nice feathers, I would never head that tree. I would always keep the feathers and keep that tree growing. And there could be a reason that would cause me to head it, but it would. But I don't like heading trees when I stick them in the ground. Yeah, I did that on apples, cherries, pears, and peaches. So yeah, you can do it on all of those. The genetics of the trees, those are Geneva rootstock. I think most of those are on Geneva 41. There might be some Bud 9 out there. The cherry trees are on Gisela 6. Frankie Lopez, on our guessing game, apples or cherries, what is the best time to plant, spring or fall? The best time to plant for me is spring. And it could be that in your area, in Michigan or some area, or Australia, it could be that for whatever reason it's better for you to plant in the fall. I've heard that, in other areas. But for us, the best time to plant is definitely in the spring. I would definitely recommend getting the ground ready plenty ahead of time. If you know you're going to plant a block, I would disc it the year before so that it gets the water, the moisture content filled up, and I would always fumigate, no matter what. In a commercial setting, I would always fumigate that block before I replant it. If you don't have access to fumigation, one thing that we've been able to do in the past is we fumigate by means of a cover crop we call caliente. And basically it's just a mix of mustard and arugula. The arugula is sweet and it draws the nematodes in, and the mustard, once it grows up and it gets those fine root hairs, we till that under and it gases off, and acts as a natural fumigant, and will actually kill those nematodes, up into about 1.5 feet deep in the ground. We've had some real good success with that. So I would, fumigate or do a mustard or some sort of a cover crop. And before we plant, we would always compost and prepare that soil. I'm a trellis first guy, so I always build the trellis for the trees first, stand that trellis up, and run the first bottom 2 wires. And the reason for that is I've learned over the years that cherries, we'll plant those by machine. I still plant those by machine, but apples, I plant all apple trees by hand with a shovel. All of our guys go out there with a shovel and they hand plant those trees. And the reason is I want to have the trellis up, the wires up, the drip line up, so that on the day that tree's planted, it's in the ground, it's clipped to the wire, and the water is running, and that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, you get that tree in the ground, and every time you move it and the wind moves it, those fine root hairs can't get connected, and that tree can't take off. But if you get it secured to that wire on the first day and you turn that water on, they'll take off and they'll grow like crazy. So that's I know that's a lot more than you asked me, but that's my take on getting trees in the ground and up and out of the ground. I have a question on Problin. That's been a real popular topic. Once again, I can't really give recommendations for rates on this channel. I'd like to be able to do that. I just can't do that. I do have an applicator's license, but I do appreciate the feedback that we've had in the group. Some of you have been willing to help one another with that sort of thing, so I appreciate that. The question is on the Problin, what is the paint mix and what's the rate of Problin, and how can a backyard grower copy it? Well, unfortunately, Problin is a growth regulator, and you really have to have a license in order to be able to buy that. The good news is you don't need Problin. I scored all of my trees in my backyard a couple of weeks ago, and I'll have real nice breaks coming. So just find a saw or the appropriate tool for scoring that, and just do it manually. You really don't need Problin if you're a backyard grower. If you score those trees in the first or second year, you'll get really, really good breaks without Problin. Looks like we have a few other questions here. Do you sit or beneficial predators for codling moth? Do we use beneficial predators? Is that the question, honey?
Do you use SIT, SIT?
Oh, sit or beneficial predators for codling moth. Yeah, we do use predators from time to time for codling moth. We have more specifically, we use predators for aphids. That's been a real problem for us. But we do release a lot of predators. We release lacewings out into the field, generally by drone. We're doing this by big giant drones. We release lacewings. This week we're going to be releasing ladybugs. There's a host of little stingers that we release out there, beneficial predators. For codling moth, though, it's pretty much we're using the Isomate C+ pheromones and others. The pheromones that you hang above the canopy of the orchard. We're using puffers on the borders. I'm sure you've used those, Kyle. I've actually seen you. I think you're one of the Michigan or Minnesota growers, so it's nice to have you on board, Kyle. What else do we do? We talked about a little bit the sterile moth program. I'm a big advocate of the sterile moth program, so I think we're doing that at maybe 6 or 7 orchards this year, and we've had very good success with that. So we also release those by drone. So yeah, we do use a host of beneficials. I'm trying to think of what predators we're using specifically for codling moth, but I think it's mostly for the aphids that we've been releasing predators. So good question. I am actually going to have more on this here in about a week as we release those ladybugs and we begin to release those sterile codling moths. I'm going to do some videos on that and catch you guys up, try to give you specific rates of how much we're putting out in the field. Jerry Wolf, the Holy Bible is the key to everything. You're absolutely right, Jerry Wolf. The Holy Bible is the key to everything, and we thank you, Lord, for the crops. Appreciate that comment. Terry Plant, question. So my queens are falling off easily. Spray 7 now. Whoa, hold on now. I'm wondering if you did lime sulfur. See if he comments. I'm curious if you did lime sulfur. But Terry, if your queens are falling off easily, it could be that you don't have a great source of pollen, and maybe you don't need to spray 7. So as long as the queens are already starting to fall off, I wouldn't spray 7. There would be no reason to do that. I mean, if you don't need it for an insecticide, and the fact is, I probably wouldn't do it. If your queens are beginning to fall off, I would just hold tight. That can happen. If you have a lack of pollen, we like to have, 4% of pollinizers in our field. Sometimes we get less than that, or the pollinators just don't grow up real tall, and we end up with like 1% of pollinizers out there in the field realistically. And we'll have a block that has a hard time setting just because of lack of pollen, or you didn't get enough bee days, or there's a whole host of reasons why those maybe didn't set as well as they could have. But if your queens are starting to fall off easily, I wouldn't spray that 7. You should get a look at that before you spray that 7. Niraj, hello. What about Geneva 969 rootstock? I love Geneva 969. I don't have a whole lot of those. I got a lot of Geneva 890s. That's our horse, right? It's real strong. I was real worried about the 890s, that it was going to be so strong. 4th year full production on an 890. And I was thinking to myself, well, it's going to be so strong that it's going to alternate bear. I've got those on Cosmic Crisp, 120 bins to the acre, year after year after year, and they don't alternate. I love the 890. Also have the Geneva 41 and the Geneva 11, which are kind of the other side of the spectrum on those. And I love those. I love the 41. They're precocious. They have really good bud density. It's a really, really good root for our area. But your question is about the 969. So why did I talk about those other 2 rootstocks? Well, because the 969 falls right in between the 2 of those. It's not as strong as the 890, and it's certainly stronger than the Geneva 41. It'll fill out its space in 3 or 4 years, just like the 890. But it's very precocious root. I have nothing but good things to say about the Geneva 969. It is fire blight resistant. I hear some talk on the channel about these Geneva rootstocks, maybe getting pumped up just a little bit for fire blight. Trust me when I tell you, Geneva rootstocks, maybe not the rootstock, but the scion will get fire blight. So trust me, they are more resistant, and I would much rather have one of those than a Bud 9 or an M26 or just about anything else, but they do get fire blight. Thank you, Niraj. That's a good question. What have we got here? Oh, hello to Niraj and Alan. Hey, Alan, I know Alan. Nice to have you on board. Mitch, Raul, Patrick. Yes, okay. Nelandro, Brent is here. Jerry, Guadalupe Martinez. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Zihihu, 656. I see that the V trellis is pretty high. You must have to harvest on a platform. We do platform harvesting, and we're leaning more to that. I'm actually on the board of what's called the AIMS program, which is the new automated robotic harvester that's coming out with AI technology. I've been on that board for about 3 years, and so as we design our trellises and our trellis systems, we always try to design them with automation in mind, because automation is coming, and we are beginning to implement that into our training and our pruning and our thinning and into our harvest. Automation is the way of the platform. We have driverless, we have fully autonomous platforms, and we have some that also need a driver. But we're looking for the days of autonomous harvesters. I can tell you with these platforms that you can only use those in areas where they fit. If you try to fit a big platform into a 10-foot V trellis, you're going to do more damage than good. So one of the reasons, your question is about a tall trellis, one of the reasons that we've gone to that very tall 14-foot 12-foot wide steel trellis is automation, to be quite honest with you. We want to get those up high, and we want to get as much light into that as we possibly can. The other reason is simply production and light penetration, adequate light. I love the idea of cropping 8 wires. Back on the 10-foot trellis, we cropped 7 wires, and that was pretty good. We got some pretty good production out of those. But I find with those 4 wires and produce, 100, 120 bins to the acre with good size all day long. So yes, those V trellises are kind of on the high side. Bear in mind though that we don't crop the top 4 to 5 feet of that wire. That is opened for light penetration to get down inside of there. So good question. Same person, Zihiu. I'm sorry if I didn't get that right. This is a cherry question. I have some in my front yard that is now too high and wasn't pruned properly when young. They are like 25 to 30 foot tall. Is it possible to correct over the years? That is now too high. We bring trees down all the time, especially cherry trees. We try to go in there and bring those down every year. The problem with a cherry tree is, and Alan is on today, and he's got a lot of great experience in cherries. He knows this. The problem with a cherry tree is the crop always wants to move up in the top of the tree. So you're always trying to bring the crop down to the bottom. If you're a cherry picker, I grew up picking cherries from the time I was 6 years old, and my job when I was just a young boy was to pick the bottoms. I went into mature cherry orchards that are 20, 25, 30 years old, and there's no bottoms left. All of the crop is up in the top of the tree. So how do we correct that? Well, we get the chainsaw out, and you get up there and you cut the top of that tree out, and you take every year you remove 2 or 3 of those big limbs out of the top of that tree. Every single year you stay disciplined about doing that. Don't try to take them out, all of them in one year, because the tree will over-invigorate. It'll become too powerful and it'll stop producing cherries, and it'll just want to be vegetative and vigorous. And so you want to be disciplined about how you do it. The first year I would take the tops out of them, just bring them down. The next year and every year after that, I would take the biggest 3 limbs out of the top of the tree, begin removing those, and then what you'll see is you'll begin to see your new growth. You'll get suckers down in the bottom of those trees. And as you begin to get those suckers in the bottom of those trees, take a string or something and pull them down. And they'll begin to crop, and you'll begin to develop the bottom of that cherry tree again. That's my best advice on that. Any other questions, Martin? Right here. Oh yeah, Trichogramma wasps. Yes, we have tried those also, Kyle. They'll sting you. Those little guys will bite you. So I think you want to look into that just a little bit. Sometimes those things will bite the workers. Look, it's not a terrible bite, but it's something to be aware of. But yes, we have also used the wasp also. So I think those will work. What do we got here? Hello, good morning. Watching from India. Welcome, Hadraja. It's nice to have you on the channel. What trends do you see with organic regenerative? Great question, Kyle. I think it's here to stay. We jumped on the a good percentage of what we grow is organic. We lean strong to organic. So I don't know, if it's 25-30% of our production leans towards organic, higher than than the trend. So we believe in organics. We've got a lot of organics, but yeah, we are regenerative growers. And we have to provide to the market what it is that the market is looking for. And the market is looking for sustainable growth and sustainable orchards. That is a big thing to millennials and mothers that are out there buying apples. They want to know that we're taking care of the land. And I know that farmers do. Farmers love the land, and farmers take care of the land. And so it's really just a matter of showing the world and the consumers that are buying our product that we do love the land as much or more than anyone else, and we do take care of it, and we have more skin in the game than anyone else, because we want to see our land passed down to our sons and our daughters and their sons and their daughters. And so we have incentive to be sustainable and use sustainable practices. So I think there's a huge and growing marketplace for organic regenerative. We've been in that program for a couple of years now, and it's a very, very important part of what we do. So if you're not in that, I'd recommend you do it. It's a lot of paperwork, but the truth of the matter is we have Global Gap, we have Regenerative, we have 3 or 4 of these sustainable type labels as part of our marketing strategy. And they're all really important. So really they're a matter of paperwork and inspections and probably the things that you're already doing in your fields, but just being organized and being ready to you know what they say, if it's not written down, if it's not on paper, it didn't happen. So it's really a lot of record keeping. But I'm a big advocate of regenerative. We're doing it. What about Geneva 11? Yes, Geneva 11 is a great rootstock, not quite as large as the 41, just kind of under that. And I do believe that maybe it's a little bit better for fire blight. I had a block one year that was half Geneva 41 and half Geneva 11, and I got fire blight in there, and I think the Geneva 11 actually did a little better in terms of getting fire blight than we saw right next to those in the same block on the Geneva 41. So yes, Geneva 11, great rootstock. Have you tried a seed on cherries for thinning? I have tried that, yes. I've tried it. It's really scary to me. I like the manual control of thinning a cherry rather than chemical thinning them, just because you just never quite know if that cherry's set or not. Even when they begin to grow, you're just not quite sure. So I have tried a seed on cherries. I don't do it as a rule. I either do hand thinning, blossom thinning, or I have done some ATS, and I really only thin G6 or Gisela 6 or Gisela 12. The Gisela rocks, they're just so precocious. But I have tried a seed. I don't use it as a matter of practice, but I know a lot of guys do. So if you've had success with Exceed, please let us know, Mitch, so we can learn from you. Anything else today, honey? Well, guys, I really appreciate you having you on board today. Like I say, we're in between pedal fall sprays right now. Millimeter sprays coming up here in about 10 days. That's a real scary time. It's also a good time to kind of get away. So I've shared with you a little bit about my involvement and my love of the H2A program. I'll share more with you about that later. But I'm going to head out here for this week and go down to Mexico and get some work done and meet some really good people and catch up with some of our employees that are down there on break right now and spend a little time with them down there in Mexico. And I'll be sure to send you some pictures and share it with you. It's always a good time down there. So join us next Sunday. Please send those questions in throughout the week. We'll try to keep answering those, but we'll keep track of them. And just like this every Sunday, we'll sit down and we'll try to answer those questions the best we can. It's really nice having everyone on board. So thank you for joining us, and have a great Sunday, and we'll see you throughout the week out in the field. Thanks.